Obrigado. Estamos. Bom dia a todos. O meu nome é Abel Aguiar, sou o Global Partner Solutions Lead da Microsoft Portugal e gostava de dar as boas-vindas a este painel Accelerating Energy Transition, Insight from Innovators. Esta conferência vai ser feita em inglês, razão pela qual vou passar rapidamente para inglês, porque temos um orador que se vai juntar remotamente e que não fala português. Será em modo silencioso, como as outras que foram até agora. With that in mind, let me switch to English and let me start presenting the speakers for this panel. Thanking you all, both here in person, but also online for attending this panel. I will start by presenting Brian Janous, that's coming from Seattle, I think. So should be probably 4 o'clock in the morning. So let me thank you, Brian, for having the availability to connect in the middle of the night from Seattle. Brian is the general manager of renewable energies for Microsoft. He's been with us for a long time now. He's responsible for the Microsoft Data Center Global Energy Strategy. And so thank you, Brian, for that. On stage with me, I have João Nascimento, head of the Digital Global Unit for EDP, responsible for the technological and digital transformation of the EDP group. And also with us, we have Nuno Silva, CTO, executive board member of FASEC, also, and I'll have to read this one, professor of the University of Porto Business School, appointed expert of the European Commission, and vice president of the Portuguese Energy Association. So thank you all, both Brian and both of you here on stage, for being part of this panel, and let's build the future together. So we have around 30 minutes. Let's take our time and get things started. So according to the World Economic Forum, we are on track to have a 2.5 degrees Celsius rise in temperature until the end of the century. This trend is not irreversible, nevertheless. So there's several things that we can do to prevent the calamities that can happen if we don't stop this trend. There are leaders, policymakers, technologists looking carefully at this, and some of the members in this panel, of course, looking carefully at this trend and see how we can reverse it in a way, or at least diminish it. Because the action is urgent. We have to move now to be able to reverse this trend in time. But there's two good things that I wanted to remark. The one is there's almost unanimity in the world, especially in the scientific community, around climate change is something caused by the human being. It's caused by us, all of us. So that's one. Having this unanimity is, I'd say, the first step that we need. The second is we have already a lot of technologies and tools, from computing, from AI, from additional applications that can help us facing these challenges and reverse the trend. So the question becomes a different one, which is there, and this is probably the baseline of this panel, is there a will to connect with the way for us to really drive forward and accelerate the energy transition and drive a new future for us? In this panel, we'll have customers, suppliers, manufacturers, all together as part of the ecosystem that can bring their insights to share to this panel. So let me start by Brian. Brian, Microsoft committed in 2030 to be carbon negative, 2050 carbon neutral. You've been part of this journey so far, so let me start by asking you, how was the journey since the beginning of the initial power purchase agreements to where we are today? Can you share part of the story? Data centers are responsible for 1-2% of the world's consumption. So how do we address this? Go on, Brian.
Thank you. Yeah, so I have been fortunate to be part of Microsoft's journey for sustainability, largely from the very beginning. when I joined the company in 2011, Microsoft was just starting to think about its role as it relates to climate. Our business was very different then too. We didn't have a massive cloud computing platform that we have today. And so when we were looking at our emissions, it was largely related to things like employee air travel, some of the energy used in our buildings. But at that time, data centers actually used less than our campus, which today the campus there in Redmond, Washington, represents a low single-digit percentage of our overall energy consumption. I mean, our cloud has grown massively. So when we started out, we did our first power purchase agreement in 2013, which was a 110 megawatt project in Texas. At the time, that seemed enormous. I thought that I could be fired as a result of it if it went poorly. But just to give you a sense of scale of where we are today, just in the last year alone, we did 5.7 gigawatts of net new renewable energy transactions around the globe. We're the largest renewable energy purchaser in many of the markets that we operate, and one of the largest renewable energy purchasers in the world. And so the scale and where we've gone over the last decade has been pretty phenomenal. And it's followed the growth of our business and the growth of our cloud, obviously. But what's been really striking to me is the continuing depth of commitment that the company is making in this space. We dipped our toe in the water in 2013, and then really started to lean in more heavily around renewable energy purchases, probably around 2016. But it wasn't until 2020 when we made our announcement to be carbon negative that I think the company really moved into high gear and started thinking not just about our own operations, but then how do we leverage our customers and partners? As you noted, data centers are 1% to 2% of the world's electricity consumption. But when we think about customers, partners across utility, transportation, logistics, we touch far more than 1% of the world's carbon emissions. And so that's where I get really excited to think about not only what can we do for our own operations, but then how can we leverage customers and partners and those relationships to really scale our impact.
Yeah. So thank you, Brian. And I think there's a lot of insights in what you said. And let me move over to João. So João, EDP has been at the forefront of renewable energy. It's also been in the forefront of digital transformation. Under this context, how can digital help EDP in driving this energy transition and going forward? What are the key technologies that you believe will continue to boost innovation in this sector?
Hello, good morning. I'm quite happy to be here to discuss this important topic with the rest of the panel, and especially to build the future, because as we all know, we are living unprecedented challenges, and the energy sector, it's right on the core of those challenges. And to face the challenge that we have ahead, we really need a profound, I would even call it, rebuild of the energy sector. And this is where EDP, with the global presence, we really want to lead this energy transition. We want to lead, and we are committing ourselves to very important and ambitious targets. As you know, EDP committed by 2025 to be coal-free, and by 2030 to be carbon neutral, and also 100% of the energy generated by renewable sources. This is a quite aggressive target if you compare to Paris agreements, which were pointing to 2050. So this really marks a clear ambition for EDP to lead the energy transition. One of the points that we should ask ourselves is that how can we change the energy system? And I believe that, and I would like to touch, and I believe touching these three different topics, which is kind of 3Ds. There is the decarbonization, decentralization, and digitalization. Let's start for the first one. Decarbonization, we really need to have a significant decrease of fossil fuel consumption. And this means that we really need to electrify the society. We are driving fuel cars, we need to drive electric cars, we are using gas heaters at home, we need to use also electric heaters at home. This is the way that we should move ahead. I don't know if you have the feeling that from the energy consumption, electricity represents as of today 20, 22, 25%. We need to jump to 50% around 2050. Within the generation of electricity, renewables, they cope with more or less 25% today. We need to jump to 88% until 2050. So there is here, and Abel, you mentioned it, also a sense of urgency that we need to move as fast as we can. The second D means decentralization. Decentralization comes with two different angles. One, that we are pushing whenever we close a coal plant, we need to replace it for a lot of different or wind plants or solar plants. Just for you to have a reference, Sines, it was generating 1,200 megawatts. I need to replace probably with more than 100 windmills. And these windmills, we will build it over all the country, which will pose also additional challenges. And this is one way to look at it. On the other way, we really would like to have customers coming with us with this, as you mentioned, willingness also to transform the energy sector. So solar PVs, we would like to create incentives and commercial propositions so that everybody can build their own PVs, and we are also pushing for neighborhoods or solar neighborhoods so that we can share the benefits for all the different stakeholders. Let me come to the last, which is the digitalization. Digitalization, it's really a must. We do have at our hands as of today a lot of different technologies, data, AI, cloud computing, IoT, we can name it. And we should use it to manage the increased complexity of the systems. We all know that the new energy systems will be more complex. Let me give you a quick example. Probably the electric cars with the batteries will play an important role. So whenever I'm switching on my electric car at home, I can charge. Probably when I'm driving to the office and I charge it back to the plug in the office, probably I will send the energy from my battery to the electric system. So all this different complexity we need to manage. We also need to make sure that we have as efficient as possible system, because now we have different sources that are intermittent, and this is paramount importance. And lastly, we need to make it for the end user as seamless as possible, so that the user experience should be as easy as possible, that we can really get the people on board with this revolution. From the ADP perspective, we are not just saying nice words, because we are putting some investments behind, and we did in our last business plan. We are committing from 21st to 2025 an investment around 1 billion just on the digitalization of EDP Group.
Great. I actually left my car charging before I came here, so it's fine.
Well,
it's fine. So Nuno, EFASEC has been deeply involved and actively involved in creating, I'd say, a cleaner, more intelligent distribution grid and building the equipment to do it. How is EFASEC addressing this challenge, integrating research in low carbon technologies, in the new products you are looking at, and how are you contributing to this ecosystem?
Thanks, Abel, and I'm very proud to be here and contributing. Good morning, everyone. So EFASEC has an ambition to play an impactful role in basically in the triple D approach that João just mentioned. So we aim with our technology, with our solutions, we aim at addressing exactly these three challenges. Possibly there are the three of them are immensely big. So let's try to decompose this. And EFASEC acts or plays a role in the energy, the mobility, and the environment activities. And we do this by offering to the market and to our customers added value solutions, such as, for example, transformers, which are a key element on the electricity infrastructure, and which will be immensely needed when we now have to extend the electrical infrastructure, as João said. Increasing the electrification will lead to a decarbonization goal, and that means that we need to be a lot more careful in both how we structure our market and our infrastructure in terms of electricity, and second, how we electrify more consumption. With our solutions, we contribute to these two key pillars, both on the infrastructure and how we manage, and managing critical infrastructures is again an immense challenge. Thank God we do have digital technologies to support that. For example, in EDP, a control center that not only controls the whole infrastructure in Portugal, but also controls the renewable assets in three different locations: Poland, Portugal, Spain, and also the US, with a single system, which cannot fail, obviously. And second, the electrification of consumption. We obviously playing a role in electrifying mobility is one of the sectors. Transportation is one of the sectors that needs to evolve faster and which will create the highest impact. Glad that you left your car at home charging, and hopefully it's a charger in the future that has some intelligence, because imagine that we have, you said, 1,000 people more or less today here, and everyone drives a vehicle and stops here at a nearby parking and charges. Public chargers go from 3.7 kilowatts to 22 kilowatts. If we do an average, that would need a transformer of 20 MVA. That's about 5,000 to 7,000 people. That's nearly a city, a small-scale city. So if we don't control these with intelligence, with smart charging platforms, with the adequate chargers, then we are creating a bigger impact than what we had before. And I need to mention also another sector which has been having a prominent attention on the last couple of years, which is the industry, and the heavy industry, the hard-to-abate industry. So decarbonizing smaller industries is well, it's a path that we need to take. Decarbonizing hard-to-abate industries, such as glass industry, cement industry, steel industry, is a lot more challenging. It's a transformation on itself. And therefore, we couldn't leave this opportunity aside. And the renewable gases sector is something that we've been investing again on the last 1.5 to 2 years. Not only using hydrogen, but more than that, extracting the subproducts from hydrogen, ammonia, and especially e-methanol, which again impacts industry and mobility per se. And this is only to name a few examples of infrastructure with conventional technologies that are now being decarbonized even on the product. So we're extracting oil and replacing by synthetic eco-friendly esters. The electric mobility, where we are very proud to be one of the major players. The renewable gases, and obviously I couldn't leave alone the last D, which is digitalization, where again we do have nice references that makes our people very proud of what we develop.
So thank you very much. I'll look in a different way every time I'll charge my car now. Let me stick with you still, Nuno, and let's go for a final round of questions. How do you see the role of EFASEC going forward? If we look not next year, but 10 years in terms of innovation and driving innovation and where the technologies come, where do you see the role of EFASEC?
So again, trying to impact positively, obviously, Let's look at three major trends, and two of them I think we've mentioned. One is deploying more renewable, and let me be more specific on photovoltaics, which in quite a significant number of locations in the world is definitely the cheapest source of electricity. But to achieve the targets that are ahead of us in terms of decarbonization, EU alone, Europe alone, needs to deploy 45 gigawatts per year until 2030. That's 10 times more than what we have today per year. And this is only to illustrate the huge challenge, which will again cause potential stress on the infrastructure. So we need also to improve the connections and the electrical infrastructure. But to do this smartly, let me introduce another trend, which is storage, energy storage, for whichever technology that that could be approached. And here we're talking about a 14-fold factor of increase just until 2030. I'm not talking 2050. I'm talking in 7 years from now, less than 7 years from now. And again, these are investments that it's not recommended, it's a must. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a huge problem with having to move away from this planet. And the third one is electric mobility, and I think I've provided an example, but to illustrate these with numbers, by 2030 again, there are up to 6.8 million charging points to be deployed. That's a scalability problem, not a lack of market problem. And this is only to illustrate the challenges. So how does FSEC wants to contribute? And we see technology as an enabler. It's definitely not an end, it's a means to an end, and this end needs to be very, very fit with our own purpose, which is to design a smarter future for a better life. And it is really, in fact, providing better life for our co-citizens. And we, as of today, we impact 1 billion people in the world. We just need to do it faster and cleaner. And to wrap this up, Abel, yes, this is an outcome of the technology that we provide on these three energy, mobility and environment sectors that we play. We couldn't do this alone. We do this obviously developing technology in-house, very well supported by our partners, by our customers, which become partners, by our suppliers, by our digital transformation challengers like Microsoft, and by also research entities, which provoke and toss at us quite a big number of questions, which in the first day seem not to have a solution and end up in disruptive technologies. But let me just conclude with mentioning the people that has the know-how and commitment, which are really superheroes impacting and decarbonizing the world. And these are the ones that I need to thank for.
Thank you, Nuno. For the ones that love movies, this weekend we had Interstellar, which is exactly the search for a new planet after we ruined ours. So it's well on point with Nuno's point. João, 3 minutes on the role of EDP moving forward, energy transition, blockers, key success factors.
Yeah, I like 3 minutes because what we really need is really to move fast. also with my answers and also with this topic moving forward. So quickly, bottlenecks. The way I see it, I see one big topic. I'm not going to call it bottleneck, but it's there, which is cybersecurity topic. We are handling critical infrastructure in many different countries. With the Ukrainian war, it becomes more evident that energy assets are critical and they are a target. And we need to move faster than the attackers. And this is a cat and the mouse kind of game. We need to be there. We are dedicating a lot of money to make sure that we can secure our different assets throughout the 29 markets where we do operate. Let me also give you another one, and I will jump because I'd like more to speak about the future and how can what will be the key success factors. The fight for digital talent, it's one of the topics that I try to also to understand how can we improve. As of today, seems that this might be a bottleneck, but because all the industries are moving on the digital transformation, so it's not only a question of the energy sector, it's a cross industry, so everybody's looking for the same kind of profiles, which for me it might present a kind of bottleneck. But moving to the future, what I think it's critical for the success, I would point out 3 different things. The first one, and coming back to the digitalization, I'm a true believer on getting as efficient as possible, and I think data, AI, advanced analytics will play a major role. We in ADP, we are betting very strongly within the data to have the capabilities, to have the right people with the right skills. Usually I ask the audience, if somebody is crazy about data and wants to solve big problems, call me, that I'm more than keen to get your CVs, because it's paramount and it's part of our strategy moving forward within EDP. And finally, I think, and coming back to your initial comment, I think we are going to be successful if we all collaborate between each other. So everybody should play an important role. We as ADP, Microsoft as Microsoft, EFASEC as EFASEC, all the other people that are in the room, we all play an important part in this puzzle. All the policymakers, the governments, the regulators, I think we should all be super focused to get the right speed to solve this big problem. We as ADP, we are really aiming for leading the energy transition, and we count with all of you to join us in this effort.
Thank you, João. Brian, coming back to you, 3 minutes on main challenges on our path, Microsoft to 2030, 2050, main challenges, how you see it.
Certainly, we definitely agree with the other panelists that we have to go very quickly. We've been moving as quickly as we can, it feels like, as a company, but it also feels like it's not fast enough at times. We have made a tremendous amount of progress, as I noted, on renewable energy, and would be remiss not to note that EDP is certainly part of our portfolio. I think we had a project with EDP that was part of our first gigawatt that we did several years ago. I think we did our most recent transaction just in December, I believe. So really appreciate the partnership there. But it does highlight how much we do need partners because we are facing significant challenges with things like supply chains that was noted earlier. We need to build a tremendous amount of new infrastructure. There is not the capacity in the globe today to be able to support that. We also need to accelerate the interconnection of these new resources. And we have significant bottlenecks in terms of interconnection queues that create real challenges. So even if we could get the supply, we can't always get the projects connected. And then we have to build new infrastructures to support these projects. We need new transmission to be able to move the power to when and where it's needed. And I think Europe is in a very critical time as well, because we're having to deal with the transition away from dependence on Russian fossil fuels and move as quickly as possible to a lower carbon solution. And in the wake of these challenges, it creates some very unique challenges that are going to require a lot of thought and a lot of partnership, because we do have to continue moving as quickly as possible, but we are facing some considerable headwinds in the form of supply chains, et cetera. So I do look at this as sort of all hands on deck. You do need large buyers like Microsoft that are providing a pull. We need partners like EDP that can help push, and we need collectively to work with governments around how we continue to reform policies, how do we accelerate things like interconnection, permitting, et cetera, so that we can move much faster than we are right now. Because as I said, we've done a lot over the last decade, which I'm really excited about. But this next decade is considerably more challenging. As we get to higher levels of renewable penetration, we are going to have to think about innovation, things like storage, things like hydrogen. How do we leverage these technologies to ensure that we can continue moving as quickly as we need to move?
So thank you very much, Brian. With this, we conclude our panel. Let me thank Brian, João, Nuno for being here and sharing their insights. I think there's a will, there's a way, but there's also extreme urgency with all hands on deck, like Brian is saying, for us to really reverse this trend and avoid looking for a new planet somewhere in the future. So let me finish by thanking you all that were here in person, but also the ones watching us online, and keep posted for the next panels here or on the other stages. Thank you.